He thought the warehouse was empty, until he saw a Navajo mother shielding her son in the shadows he used to kill for. Before he could demand answers, engines growled outside and a rival crew kicked in the door, hunting for blood he knew would be theirs. And as he stood between the intruders and the terrified child, one question detonated in his mind. Why did protecting them feel like the first real choice he'd made in years? And what was coming for them next? Norris Manny stepped inside with the heavy stillness of a man who had learned to move quietly long before he learned to trust. The once feared Mafia boss paused at the threshold, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness swallowing the abandoned space. This place had once been his empire's hidden artery. Now it was nothing but a carcass of rust and decay, a monument to a life he could no longer outrun. But the warehouse wasn't empty. A flicker of movement, small, sharp, caught his attention near a stack of broken crates. Norris stiffened. The air changed. Silence tightened. He took one step forward, boots crunching glass, and the shadows shifted again. This time he saw them clearly. A woman. And a child. Hello, family. Welcome to Bold Stories, where we bring you thrilling stories of kindness, love, and redemption. Before we dive in, hit the subscribe button to stay connected and comment where you are watching from. They were huddled together, wrapped in thin blankets that had no business fighting this kind of cold. The woman's dark eyes, steady, protective, met his first. She pulled the boy closer with an instinctive strength that spoke of long roads, danger, and a resolve carved from something ancient. A strand of beaded jewelry slipped from beneath her sleeve when she moved, catching the faint light. Navajo. Unmistakably. The boy peeked out, wide-eyed, curious, too innocent for a place like this. His small fingers clung to his mother's jacket as if the warehouse itself might swallow him if he let go. Norris stood there, the menace in him meeting the fragile courage in them, and for the first time in a long while, something inside him shifted. Not enough to soften, just enough to question. What were they doing here, inside his ruin? What danger had chased them into the belly of a Mafia ghost? And why, despite himself, did he feel the first stirrings of something he thought he'd buried years ago? The shadows seemed to breathe again, waiting. If anyone else had found them, their night would have ended differently. But fate, cruel, strange, or maybe merciful, had brought them to him. And Norris Manny, a man who'd built a kingdom out of fear, suddenly found himself face to face with two souls who had nothing left but each other. A beginning he never expected, and a story that would demand more of him than he had ever given. The night held its breath as he stepped closer, and the past he tried to forget began to stir. He just didn't know yet that this warehouse, this forgotten tomb of his old life, was about to become the place where everything changed. And so it began. Norris stepped closer, and the woman straightened, not enough to challenge him, but enough to show she wouldn't break. The boy pressed deeper into her side, his small hands clutching fabric worn thin by cold nights. "Get up," Norris said, his voice low, steady. Old habits made it sharper than he intended. "Both of you." The woman didn't move. Instead, she lifted her chin the slightest bit. Her dark eyes locked onto his with a calmness so controlled it almost felt ceremonial. "We're not here to steal," she said quietly. "We just needed somewhere warm enough to survive the night." Her voice carried no tremble, no excuse, just truth stripped bare. Norris scanned the piles of crates behind them, nothing disturbed, nothing missing. But suspicion was muscle memory to him, older than mercy. "People don't just wander into a place like this," he said. "Not unless they're following orders." The boy looked up at that, curiosity brightening his features. "Orders," he whispered, the word heavy with unfamiliarity. His mother placed a protective hand on his head, smoothing his hair gently. "He doesn't know your world," she murmured. "He shouldn't have to." Norris felt something prick at him, an old uncomfortable ache he usually silenced with anger or distance. But tonight, neither came easily. "What's your name?" he asked the woman. She hesitated, watching him with a measured caution of someone who had learned long ago that names could be weapons. "Jackie," she finally said. "And this is Eli." Eli peeked around her arm again, his eyes round and unafraid in a way that made Norris feel strangely exposed. Kids in his world never looked like that. They were either hardened too early or scared to the bone. Innocence didn't survive long around men like him. Jackie shifted, the movement revealing a woven bracelet around her wrist, turquoise and shell beads arranged in an intricate pattern. Norris recognized craftsmanship like that from his years dealing with buyers who craved authenticity they didn't deserve. Navajo work. Real. Protected. Before he could speak again, Eli pointed at a rusty metal beam overhead. "It's making noise," he said softly. Right on cue, the warehouse emitted a long creak, deep, groaning, like the bones of an old animal waking up. The roof had always been unstable, but tonight the sound felt different, almost like the place was warning him. Or watching. Norris's instincts sharpened. "Did anyone follow you?" he asked, turning his attention back to Jackie. "Anyone at all?" "No," she shook her head, then added, "I would know." Something in her tone made him believe her. It wasn't desperation, it was certainty rooted in experience. Still, doubt lingered. "You show up in my warehouse," Norris said, "with no explanation, no fear, and you expect me to believe it's a coincidence?" Jackie met his gaze steadily. "Fear doesn't help a mother protect her child," she said. "And coincidence. Sometimes it's all people like us have left." The boy tugged at her sleeve. "Mom!" She looked down, murmuring something in Navajo, soft, rhythmic, shaped with love instead of panic. The language moved like a quiet prayer, grounding Eli instantly. Norris had heard many tongues in his life, some sharp and secretive, others musical or aggressive. But this, it felt like earth, like wind over canyons, like history. Eli nodded at whatever she whispered and relaxed slightly. Norris found himself staring longer than he should have, caught off guard by the tenderness between them. He cleared his throat. "How long have you been hiding in here?" Jackie exhaled slowly. "A few hours. We found the side door unlocked. I thought, maybe it was safe enough." Safe. In a warehouse once soaked in blood and secrets. The irony almost made Norris laugh. "You chose the wrong place," he said. "No," Jackie answered softly, her voice firm but respectful. "We chose the only place left." A distant sound, something sharp, metallic, echoed through the far end of the warehouse. Norris's hand instinctively went to his coat, where a weapon used to be, though tonight he wasn't carrying. Another creak followed, longer this time, like footsteps moving across an upper beam. Jackie's posture changed. Her eyes darted toward the sound. "Is someone else here?" "No one who should be," Norris muttered. He stepped forward again, this time kneeling so he was closer to Eli's height. The boy flinched but didn't hide. Up close, Norris could see the smudges of dirt on his cheeks, the faint quiver in his lip, and something else, an unbroken spark. "What were you doing in this part of town?" Norris asked him gently. Eli shrugged, not fully understanding. "Walking. Mom said we had to keep moving." "Why?" Before Eli could answer, Jackie spoke for him. "Because staying in one place got dangerous." Something about the way she said it, quiet, resigned, angered Norris more than he expected. Not at her. At whoever had pushed them into this life. Another metallic thud echoed overhead. This time it wasn't the wind. Norris stood in a single smooth motion. "You two stay here," he ordered. Jackie rose as well. "We don't take orders," she said. For the first time, Norris felt something akin to a smile tug at the corner of his mouth. Not amusement, but respect. "Then consider it a suggestion," he said. "I need to make sure that sound isn't someone who actually does belong in my world." Jackie hesitated. "Be careful," she murmured before she could stop herself. He paused, measuring her expression. The concern wasn't for him, it was for Eli, for the possibility that danger might come closer than she could stop. "I always am," Norris said. But he wasn't sure it was true anymore. He moved toward the darker end of the warehouse, senses sharpened, hearing every creak and shift. Behind him, Jackie whispered to Eli again. The boy watched Norris with an expression he couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe. Or faith. Neither belonged in this place, yet here they were. Norris paused mid-step. Why did it matter what the boy thought of him? Why did their presence feel like a crack forming in armor he had worn for decades? He pushed the questions aside and focused on the shadows ahead. But Jackie's voice drifted after him, steady and strong. "We're not your enemies." He didn't turn around. "I don't have enemies anymore," he said, though the lie tasted familiar. The warehouse responded with another groan, louder this time, as if arguing. When he reached the far corner, he saw nothing but broken pallets and old machinery. No intruders. No threats. Just the cold settling deeper into the concrete. Still, the noise had been real. Something, or someone, had been here recently. He returned to Jackie and Eli, finding them exactly where he left them, though Jackie now stood in front of the boy, shielding him with a stance that radiated strength. "Nothing there," Norris said. "Are you sure?" Jackie asked. "No," he admitted. "But nothing now." She nodded once, accepting the answer without argument. Eli stepped forward suddenly, surprising both of them. "Are you going to make us leave?" Norris looked down at him. Innocent. Brave. Too brave. "Not yet," he said. "Not tonight." Relief washed over Eli's face, so open it almost hurt to look at. Norris felt something shift inside him again. A tug he didn't want to name. Jackie lowered her guard just a fraction. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't respond. Gratitude was unfamiliar territory, and the weight of it sat strangely on him. Another gust of wind rattled the panels overhead, causing the entire warehouse to shudder. Jackie flinched. Eli grabbed her hand, and Norris found himself stepping closer, not to intimidate, but to reassure. "You're safe for now," he said quietly. "I'll make sure of it." Jackie studied him, searching for lies. She didn't find any. For a long moment, the three of them stood in the dim, trembling light, strangers bound not by trust, but by circumstance, fear, and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, they had stumbled into a place where survival wasn't impossible. The warehouse exhaled again, settling into uneasy silence. And in that silence, Norris felt the first undeniable pull of something he'd spent years trying to bury: responsibility. If you believe in courage in the smallest hearts, share the story with someone who needs it. Norris didn't know it yet, but the night was far from over, and the danger waiting outside the warehouse was about to make its presence known. The warehouse had fallen into an uneasy silence, the kind that lingered after danger brushed close but didn't fully show itself. Norris stood a few feet away from Jackie and Eli, the cold settling between them like a wall neither side knew how to cross. He exhaled slowly. "Follow me," he said, turning toward the inner corridor of the warehouse. "There's a place in the back that's warmer. Temporary. Just for the night." Jackie hesitated. Eli looked up at her, eyes wide, searching her expression for a decision. She brushed her fingers over his hair, gentle, reassuring, then nodded once. "We'll stay," she said carefully. "For the night." Her voice carried gratitude, but it was wrapped in caution, like every word had to protect something fragile. Norris didn't wait for more. He led them through a maze of collapsed shelving and rusted machinery, stopping at a small storage room tucked behind a concrete column. The door hung crooked but intact enough to block most of the draft. Inside, old crates were stacked to one side, leaving a patch of floor large enough for two people, and maybe a small child, to sleep without freezing. He'd used this room years ago for meetings no one was supposed to overhear. Now it felt like a relic of a life that had taken too much. "This is the best spot," Norris said. "You'll be out of the wind here." Jackie stepped inside, scanning every corner before allowing Eli to follow. Her instincts were sharp, survivor sharp, and Norris found himself respecting the way she assessed danger without panic. "It's warm," Eli whispered, already curling his arms around his chest as if the stale air was a luxury. Warm was generous, Norris thought. But compared to the open warehouse, it was almost comfortable. He reached into an old crate and pulled out a pair of wool blankets, dusty but thick. "Not much," he muttered, handing them over. "But it's something." Jackie accepted them but looked at him carefully. "Why are you helping us?" The question hit him harder than he expected. Because he didn't know. Because something about the way she held her son reminded him of a time before violence ran his life. because the warehouse felt different with them inside, less like a tomb and more like something waiting to be redeemed. But Norris wasn't ready for honesty. Not yet. "It's cold," he said simply. "And the boy needs warmth." Eli looked up at him and smiled, a real, unguarded smile. Norris had seen a lot of expressions in his life. Fear, rage, defiance, desperation. But a child's gratitude? That was rare. Almost foreign. "I can make a fire," Eli said proudly. Jackie immediately shushed him. "Not here. It's too dangerous." Norris surprised himself by softening his tone. "She's right, kid. But give me a minute." He stepped out of the room and rummaged through a storage bin until he found what he remembered, a small camping stove he'd confiscated years ago and forgotten. He brought it back, set it on the crate, and lit the tiny flame. Warmth seeped through the cold air in slow waves. Eli's eyes lit up like the flame was magic. "It's like a mini fire." Norris crouched beside the stove. "Exactly." Jackie wrapped one blanket around Eli's shoulders and spread the other on the floor. As she worked, the woven beads on her bracelet glimmered in the flickering light. Norris found his gaze drawn to it. Its colors, its craftsmanship, its meaning. Pieces of tradition carried through hardship. Hope stitched into something delicate enough to break. He wondered what she had left behind to still be holding onto it. When she finally sat, Norris noticed how she positioned herself slightly between him and Eli. Not hostile, but careful. He had lived his whole life among people who pretended trust was a currency. Jackie made no such pretense. She protected what mattered openly. "You hungry?" Norris asked. Eli nodded so fast his curls bounced. Norris pulled out a sealed can of soup from an emergency stash he never thought he'd use. As it warmed on the stove, a faint smell drifted through the room, a smell that reminded him of nights long gone. Nights when he wasn't alone. He pushed the memory down, but it clawed back. His mother stirring soup the night before everything shattered. His little sister laughing. A home that no longer existed. Power had filled the void, but power had never been warm. When the soup was ready, Norris poured it into 2 cups he found in another crate. Eli took his cup with both hands, blowing on it eagerly. Jackie accepted hers with a nod, though she offered most of it to her son when he wasn't looking. Norris noticed. "You haven't eaten?" he asked. "I'm fine." "You're not." Jackie stared at him, and for a moment the exhaustion behind her steady exterior cracked, just enough to show the truth. Eli giggled suddenly, breaking the tension. "It tastes good," he said, slurping loudly. "Really good." Norris couldn't help the faint laugh that escaped him. "Glad someone thinks so." Jackie's lips curved the slightest bit. A small moment, but real. Human. Something he thought he'd forgotten how to feel. Outside, the wind picked up. The warehouse groaned again, louder this time, like metal twisting under strain. Jackie tensed, her hand instantly reaching for Eli. Norris listened carefully. This wasn't just weather. It was movement. Subtle, scattered, but patterned. "Someone's out there," he murmured. Jackie's eyes sharpened. "Are they looking for you?" "Maybe," Norris admitted. "Or for this place." He didn't tell her the truth. Rival gangs had been circling the area for months, drawn to the vacuum left by his retreat from power. They knew the warehouse still held ghosts, secrets, money, weapons. And men hungry for territory never cared who else got hurt. Jackie lowered her voice. "If they find us." "They won't tonight," Norris cut in. "But you'll need to stay quiet. No wandering. No lights outside this room." She nodded stiffly. "We understand." Eli looked up. "Are bad people coming?" Jackie hesitated, but Norris answered first. "Not tonight," he said firmly. "And even if they did, they'd have to get past me first." Eli seemed satisfied by that. Jackie studied him again, not with fear this time, but with something more complicated. Trust wasn't there. Not yet. But understanding had begun to take shape. Norris cleared his throat and stood. "I'll keep watch." "Alone?" Jackie asked. "Always." He stepped outside the room, positioning himself where he could see the main warehouse floor. The cold bit through his clothes, but the silence allowed his thoughts to drift where he didn't want them to go. His past. His choices. The faces he'd pushed away or buried. Once, he'd had a family. A sister who used to paint dolls and tie ribbons in his hair as a joke. A mother who believed forgiveness could save anyone. A father who died because Norris had trusted the wrong man. Power had promised to fill the cracks. It had only widened them. Now, behind him, in a small room lit by a fragile flame, sat a woman and child who didn't know anything about the empire he'd built, or the violence he walked away from. They weren't his responsibility. They weren't his to protect. And yet, the warehouse creaked again. Farther this time. He stiffened. Listening. Voices. Low. Distant. But real. Rival gang scouts. Closer than last night. Closer than he liked. He returned to the doorway and looked toward Jackie. She was holding Eli's hand, humming something soft in Navajo. Melodic, soothing, ancient. The boy's eyelids fluttered, sleep tugging at him. It was peaceful in a way Norris hadn't seen in years. Too peaceful for the danger creeping toward them. Jackie met his eyes, silently asking the question neither of them said aloud. Is it safe? For now. He nodded once. She relaxed slightly but kept Eli close, her fingers threaded with his like lifelines. Norris leaned against the frame, watching them without meaning to. Something unfamiliar settled inside him. Not warmth exactly, but the beginning of it. A flicker of something he thought he'd buried with the man he used to be. If you've ever found kindness in unexpected places, like and subscribe to share that hope with others. Outside, the voices faded, swallowed by the night. Inside, the warehouse breathed slower. And in the dim light of the fading flame, Norris Manny, once a king of fear, found himself guarding two strangers as though they were the last good thing left in the world. The night pressed close around the warehouse, the quiet broken only by Eli's soft humming as he stacked bottle caps into a crooked little tower. Norris sat across from him, pretending not to watch, but every now and then his eyes drifted to the boy. How his tiny fingers worked with such patience, how his face scrunched in triumph when the tower stayed upright. Jackie sat nearby, her back straight, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She'd eaten little, spoken less, but the shadows under her eyes told enough. When she finally broke the silence, her voice was low and almost lost in the echo of dripping pipes. You said earlier, she murmured, that trouble is always looking for a door to walk through. Her gaze lifted to his, steady despite the tremble beneath. For us, trouble never needed a door. It just barged in. Norris felt something in his chest pull tight. You don't have to explain anything. Her lips curved, not in a smile, not in bitterness, but something like surrender. But I should. You're giving us a place to breathe, even if it scares you. He didn't respond. The truth was too raw to admit aloud. Jackie smoothed a hand over Eli's hair. Dark, thick, soft waves that glowed bronze in the dim light. We weren't supposed to keep running forever, she said. But after Eli's father died, everything fell apart faster than I could hold it together. Norris stiffened. Death had a way of dragging old memories by the throat. He wasn't a good man, Jackie continued. But he was all we had. When he got mixed with the wrong people, they came for us instead. She took a slow breath. We left everything behind in one night. No warning. No place to go. Just here. Here, Norris echoed, glancing around at rusted beams and oil-stained floors. Hell of a landing spot. We weren't looking for comfort. Her voice didn't break, but her eyes glistened. Just somewhere no one would think to look. For a moment, the warehouse felt colder. Norris's jaw flexed. He knew what it was like to be hunted, not by people, but by the ghosts you fed and fed until they learned to live inside you. Eli toppled his bottle-cap tower with a delighted squeal. Mama! It fell like the coyote in the story. Jackie's expression softened. Yeat-e shiazi, she whispered to him, brushing his cheek. Her voice carried musical tones. Navajo, Norris realized, though he'd only ever heard it in fragments spoken by old men around desert fires long ago. Eli giggled and tried to mimic her words, his little tongue stumbling through the syllables. Norris felt warmth stir in his chest, unexpected, unwelcome, but undeniably human. "You're Navajo?" he asked softly. Jackie nodded. "My mother was. She passed when I was 15. I kept what I could, stories, bits of language, some jewelry." She touched the pendant at her throat, silver and turquoise, polished smooth from years of being clutched during fear. "They remind me of who I was before everything went wrong." Norris looked away, fingers curling against his knee. "Everybody's got a before. And an after," she said. He didn't miss the way she studied him, as if she could see the lines carved into him by violence and regret. As if she recognized something familiar. "My after wasn't much better," she said quietly. "People think running makes you strong. But running, it breaks you in places no one can see." Norris felt that like a blow. "You did what you had to." "So did you," she replied, surprising him. His breath stalled. "You don't know anything about me." "No," she tilted her head. "But Eli does." Norris blinked. "The kid." Jackie nodded toward the boy, now curled up in a blanket, humming to his bottle caps. "He said you look sad when you think nobody's watching." Norris let out a harsh laugh. "Kids reading me like a book? Children see the things adults try to bury." He swallowed hard, throat burning. Memories stirred, his brother's laughter fading into gunshots, the first time he had to spill blood to survive, the moment power stopped feeling like a shield and turned into a cage. "Look," he muttered, voice rougher than intended. "I ain't your savior. I've done things you don't want to know." "I'm not asking for a savior," Jackie said. "Just a little time to stop running." Something in her tone, fragile hope layered over exhaustion, cut straight through him. Before he could respond, a low rumble throbbed through the floorboards. Norris froze. Jackie tensed, scooping Eli close. There it was again, an engine in the distance, growing, then fading, followed by muffled voices. Male. Sharp. Too close for comfort. Norris moved without thinking, standing, scanning the warehouse shadows. "Stay behind me." Jackie didn't argue. The sounds drifted off, swallowed by the night, but the tension lingered like smoke. "That wasn't random," Norris muttered. "Could be scavengers. Could be someone sniffing around for me. Or for them," his instincts whispered. Jackie's grip tightened around Eli. "We didn't lead anyone here. I swear." "I know," Norris said. And he did. Somehow. Silence stretched thin between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Norris paced once, twice, fighting the urge to push them away, to tell them to run, to leave before danger sharpened its teeth. But then Eli yawned, sleepy and soft, reaching out blindly. "Mama, I'm tired." Jackie gathered him close, whispering something tender in Navajo, gentle sounds that made the air feel less crushing. Norris's chest ached. Damn it, this wasn't supposed to be his problem. Yet when he looked at them, truly looked, he didn't see weakness. He saw survival. Grit. A small, stubborn flame refusing to die. He also saw himself. "Nobody's gonna hurt you here," he heard himself say. The words tasted strange, like something he hadn't spoken in years. Jackie blinked up at him. "Why?" He opened his mouth, then shut it again. "Because I'm tired of watching people get broken. Because you reminded me I wasn't always a monster. Because that kid smiled at me like I wasn't poison." None of the words felt safe to say. Instead, he settled on the truth that scared him the least. "Because trouble already walked through that door," he murmured. "Might as well not let it win." Jackie's eyes glistened, not from tears, but something like recognition. She nodded once. Outside, a distant motorcycle engine revved, low, hungry, prowling the streets like a predator. The warehouse walls trembled. Eli, half asleep, murmured, "Mama, is he gonna keep us safe?" Jackie looked at Norris. Norris's answer came out low, steady, and dangerous. "Yeah, kid," he said. "I'm gonna try." And in the silence that followed, the shadows outside shifted again, reminding them all that danger was getting closer with every heartbeat. The night outside growled with engines. Norris moved first, silent, controlled, every muscle hardening with instinct honed from too many years surviving men who only respected blood. Jackie clutched Eli, her knuckles white against the boy's blanket. Her eyes darted to Norris, searching for answers in the tension carved into his face. "They're close," Norris murmured. "Too close." A motorcycle revved again, this time stopping just outside the warehouse's rusted side entrance. Voices followed, muddled but unmistakably hostile. Jackie pulled Eli back. "Is it them?" "Rival crew," Norris said quietly. "Not the smartest bunch, but they've got teeth. And word's been spreading that I'm off the grid." He didn't add the part gnawing at him. They'd kill anything they thought he cared about. Even if those things had walked into his life only hours ago. A metallic rattle hit the door, testing the lock. Norris motioned Jackie toward a stack of crates. "Stay low. Don't move unless I say." Jackie swallowed hard but obeyed, crouching with Eli tucked beneath her arm. The boy tried to be brave, lips pressed tight, eyes wide and shimmering with fear. Norris turned toward the shadows, searching for anything he could use without starting a full-blown war. Killing one of their rivals tonight would bring the entire pack down on them. He grabbed a length of rusted chain, wrapped one end around his fist, the other around a support beam just beside the entrance, creating a makeshift trip snare. Not perfect, but enough to slow whoever burst through. The warehouse door groaned. Eli whimpered. Norris's jaw clenched. "Easy, kid," he whispered from across the room. "Nobody's touching you." The door slammed inward. A boot kicked it open fully, revealing the first man, bald, scarred, jittery from cheap adrenaline. Two others flanked him, weapons drawn but not firing yet. They scanned the space. "Yo!" the bald one shouted. "We heard someone's been squatting in Old Iron Row. Come out now and maybe we won't." His foot hit the chain. He crashed forward so hard his skull smacked concrete. The other two flinched, giving Norris the half-second he needed. He shoved over a stack of metal rods, sending them clattering like thunder across the floor. The noise ricocheted through the warehouse, disorienting, deafening. One rival stumbled back, covering his ears. Norris moved through shadows like they were part of him. He seized a loose tarp, flung it over the second intruder, then kicked the man's knee sideways. A howl followed. The bald one rolled, shaking stars from his eyes. "Norris, that you? You think you can hide from?" Norris stepped into the dim light just long enough for the man to see him, then slammed a metal crate shut between them, blocking his path. "You're in the wrong place," Norris said, voice cold enough to bite. The intruders hesitated. Not because they feared him, but because uncertainty kept their fingers off their triggers. They thought Norris was alone. A cornered animal. Good. Let them keep thinking it. The third man, face tattooed and mean, squinted toward the shadows behind Norris. "You got company in here?" Heard voices. Norris didn't blink. Just ghosts. But Eli, terrified, trembling, let out a tiny, audible sniffle. The tattooed man grinned. "Ain't no ghost sounds like that." Jackie wrapped a hand around Eli's mouth, but it was too late. They started forward. Norris saw the moment fear snapped into action. That dangerous, electric instant before everything went sideways. Fine. Let it go sideways. He grabbed a hanging chain, swung it in a wide arc, smashing it into a row of glass panes stacked against the wall. They shattered loud enough to shake dust from the rafters. The intruders recoiled, cursing. "You want to start a war, Norris?" the bald one yelled. "'Cause we'll burn this whole place down with you in it." Norris stepped closer, voice steady, deadly calm. "You burn it, you lose your only leverage." "What leverage?" He pointed behind them. Smoke alarms, half broken, half forgotten, were flickering with sparks from the shattered glass. The sprinklers clicked, threatening to come alive. "You set foot any farther," Norris warned, "and this whole place floods. Evidence everywhere. Police attention. You think your boss wants that?" The rivals froze. They weren't afraid of Norris. They were afraid of consequences. "You got 10 seconds, Norris said, to get out." The tattooed man spat at the ground but backed up. The bald one glared, rubbing his bruised head. "This ain't over." "It never is," Norris replied. They retreated slowly, mounting their bikes, engines growling like warning shots before they peeled away into the night. Silence returned, thick, vibrating with leftover adrenaline. Norris exhaled hard. Jackie emerged from behind the crates, Eli clinging to her neck, trembling. "You said they wouldn't hurt us," she whispered, voice shaking. "And they didn't," Norris replied. "Because I was here." "But why?" Her eyes searched his, desperate for something she wasn't sure existed. "Why risk yourself for us?" He should have said nothing. He should have pushed them out the door and told them to run far, far away. But Eli slipped from his mother's arms, toddling toward a stack of old crates, right where Norris had once hidden something he prayed the boy would never find. "Eli, wait!" Norris moved, but too late. The child tugged on a canvas sheet. It fell away, revealing an entire weapons cache. Handguns, ammunition, knives. Evidence of a past Norris had tried, barely, to bury. Eli stared at the array with round, confused eyes. "Mr. Norris, why do you have scary things?" Jackie's breath broke. Norris froze. They saw everything. Every ugly truth he kept locked away. And for the first time in years, guilt sliced through him clean and deep. He knelt beside the boy, voice low. "These aren't for hurting people. Not unless I have to protect someone." "Protect us," Eli whispered. The question nearly undid him. Norris swallowed. "Yeah, if it comes to that." Jackie's eyes softened, but fear still lingered. "This world you're part of, it could destroy us." He met her gaze without flinching. "Then I'll take you out of it before it has the chance." A dangerous promise. An impossible one. Yet it came from the truest part of him. Eli reached for Norris's hand, tiny fingers curling around his calloused ones. And Norris knew. The stakes had just changed. Protecting them wasn't a choice anymore. It was a vow. The warehouse felt different after the gang incident. Quieter, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Dust still floated in the moonlight, but something softer lived in the air now. Not safety. Not yet. But trust trying to take its first, trembling steps. Jackie watched Norris carefully as he recovered the weapon stash, this time sealing it with an iron lock he welded into place. Eli sat cross-legged near the blankets, humming under his breath, building little towers with old screws and washers. When Norris finally turned back toward them, Jackie stood with her arms folded, not afraid, but firm. "I need to know something," she said. "Earlier, you promised to protect us. I need to understand why." Norris wiped sweat from his brow, shrugging off the question. "You needed help." "Lots of people need help," she countered quietly. "But you're you." Not an accusation. A truth. Norris looked away, jaw tightening. "Maybe I'm tired of walking past people like they're already dead. Maybe I don't want to be that man anymore. And you think helping us will fix you?" "No," his voice was rough, scraped raw. "But it might make me try." Jackie held his gaze a long moment before giving a single, slow nod. "I don't want charity," she said. "I want safety and honesty." "Then that's what you'll get." Her shoulders loosened, just enough to show he'd said the right thing. Later that night, Jackie built a tiny fire pit using a rusted metal drum and bricks. Eli gathered scraps of wood, dropping them into the drum proudly. Norris watched them from a distance before stepping forward awkwardly, a can of soup in hand. Jackie's lips curved faintly. "Thank you." They heated the soup together, Jackie stirring, Norris holding the drum steady. The simple act, ordinary, domestic, felt almost surreal in the cold, echoing warehouse. Eli leaned against Norris's leg at one point, sleepy and trusting. Norris stiffened, unsure what to do with the small weight of a child who wasn't afraid of him. Jackie noticed. "You don't have to stand so still," she murmured. "He won't break you." Norris let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding and slowly rested a hand on Eli's back. Tentative. Careful. And Eli smiled in his sleep. It struck Norris harder than any punch he'd ever taken. When they ate, Jackie spoke first. My grandmother used to say the fire remembers everything. The good, the scars, the promises. Norris glanced at the flames. What does it remember for you? Her eyes softened with sorrow. Running. Fear. Losing home after home until even the wind didn't recognize us anymore. She didn't say the rest, but he heard it anyway. Being invisible. Being unwanted. Being hunted. He poked the fire with a metal rod, quiet for a long time. My past isn't any prettier. I made choices I thought would keep me alive. Instead, they kept me alone. Jackie looked at him, not with judgment, but with an understanding born from her own broken road. The fire crackled between them, carrying their shared silence. Eli stirred and climbed into Jackie's lap. Norris watched them together, the gentle way Jackie smoothed Eli's hair, the peaceful trust in the boy's breathing, and something inside him ached with an unfamiliar warmth. You're good with him, Jackie said softly. Norris blinked. I haven't been good with anyone in a long time. People change. Do they? She tilted her head. You did tonight. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Because part of him feared she was right. Later, after Eli fell asleep, Jackie and Norris began clearing a corner of the warehouse. An old wooden pallet became a makeshift bed platform. Torn cloths became curtains. They worked together in comfortable silence, Norris lifting heavy crates with ease, Jackie arranging blankets with careful, homemaking hands. When they stepped back, the space looked almost safe. A small, fragile beginning. Jackie's voice was barely above a whisper. I haven't had a place for a long time. Norris nodded. Then we'll keep this one standing. We. He swallowed. If you'll let me. Jackie searched his face again, but this time her expression softened entirely, like she saw past the criminal underneath and into the man he could have been if the world had been kinder. You know, she said, Eli likes you. More than he likes most people. Norris forced a faint scoff. Kids got strange taste. No, she said gently. He just sees what others don't. Norris froze. What's that supposed to mean? Jackie knelt to tuck the blankets under Eli's chin. That you're not the monster you think you are. He turned away, throat tightening. I've done things. So have I. She rose to her feet. Surviving makes us do things we hate. But protecting someone, that's a choice too. Norris's chest tightened painfully. You think protecting you too will fix anything? It might fix something, she said. In you. He had no answer. But the truth was already settling into him, quiet and undeniable. He wanted to protect them. Not because of guilt. Not because of obligation. But because Eli's small hand in his earlier had touched a place inside him that hadn't been alive in years. A place that remembered softness. Family. Possibility. Years of violence had taught Norris one thing. With every choice came a turning point. Tonight, he felt one cracking open under his feet. And when Jackie finally whispered, "Good night, Norris," and led Eli into their small corner of warmth, he felt it fully. He was no longer protecting strangers. He was choosing them. Night settled over the warehouse in a heavy, breathless hush. Jackie and Eli were curled in their small corner of blankets, the fire in the metal drum dying into embers. Norris patrolled the edge of the shadows, listening with the instinct of a man who had survived too many ambushes to ever truly rest. A metallic clatter cut through the silence. Not from inside. Outside. Norris's head snapped toward the far loading bay. Tires crushed gravel. Engines rumbled low. Too many, too close. He felt the shift in the air. They'd been found. Again. He moved fast. "Jackie," he whispered sharply. She sat up instantly, alert, pulling Eli close. "What is it?" "People coming. Not mine." Jackie's eyes widened, but she didn't panic. Instead, She guided Eli toward the darkest corner behind a fallen stack of crates. "Stay down," she told him, brushing his cheek. "Do not move unless I call you. Do you understand?" Eli nodded, fear tightening his small face. Norris watched the exchange. Her steadiness, her instinct to protect, and something fierce burned in him. Not anger. Not violence. Resolve. He stepped into the open space just as the warehouse doors rattled violently. A voice barked from outside. "Manny, we know you're in there. And you've got company." Norris clenched his jaw. This wasn't about him anymore. They wanted the warehouse for distribution. They wanted leverage. They wanted blood. They weren't getting Jackie or Eli. He scanned the warehouse quickly. Metal pipes, chains, hanging pulleys, loose debris. Tools, not weapons. Perfect. The door burst open. 3 men stormed in, guns raised. More shadows moved behind them. Norris ducked behind a support beam as bullets cracked through the air, sparks dancing off concrete. Instead of firing back, his old instinct, he reached for a heavy iron chain overhead and pulled it hard. A stack of rotting pallets crashed down on the first gunman. The second cursed and ran to flank him. Jackie's voice suddenly pierced the chaos. "Norris! On your left!" He spun just as the second attacker lunged. Norris grabbed a rusted wrench from the floor and struck the man's wrist, sending his gun skittering across the concrete. He kicked it away, refusing to use it. Non-lethal. He had sworn to himself, no blood, not tonight. Not in front of them. The third man advanced, firing wild shots. Norris ducked behind a forklift, mind racing. He yanked the fuel line free, grabbed a broken glass bottle, filled it, stuffed a rag inside, and lit it from the dying fire drum. A burst of flames roared alive. But he didn't throw it. He slammed it onto the floor in front of the advancing gang member. Fire exploded upward, blocking the path. The man stumbled back with a curse as smoke filled the air. "Fall back," someone shouted from outside. "He's not worth it." Norris's chest heaved as footsteps retreated, engines revved, and gravel scattered. Silence returned in a slow, unsettling wave. Only crackling fire and his own heartbeat remained. Jackie emerged from behind the crates, pulling Eli with her. She hurried toward him, touching his arm as if confirming he was real. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "No," his voice broke slightly. "Are you two all right?" Eli nodded quickly, clinging to Jackie's side. Norris knelt so he was eye level with the boy. "You did everything right. You stayed hidden. I'm proud of you." Eli blinked at him, then leaned forward and wrapped his tiny arms around Norris's neck. The hug punched straight through whatever armor Norris had left. Jackie's gaze softened. "Thank you," she whispered, "for choosing us." He stood slowly, eyes sweeping the warehouse, broken pallets, smoke curling near the ceiling, boot prints trailing back to the open door. He knew what this meant. They weren't safe here. Not anymore. Not unless he became the man he used to be, or something entirely new. Jackie stepped closer. "What now?" Norris looked at her, really looked at her. A woman who had lost everything and still fought. A child who clung to hope despite the world's cruelty. "This isn't about the warehouse," Norris said quietly. "Or the gangs. They wanted to scare me off. But I'm not leaving. Not unless you're coming with me." "And if they come back?" Jackie asked. "They'll come for me," Norris said. "Not you. And I won't let them touch what matters." Jackie's breath caught. "What matters?" He didn't hesitate. "You too." For a moment, Jackie's face flickered with something like disbelief, then something like hope. The fire behind them dimmed, washing the warehouse in soft amber light. Eli slipped his small hand into Norris's. Family. It wasn't a word Norris had allowed himself in years. But here it was, holding on to him with trembling fingers. And in the quiet aftermath of the attack, Norris Manny finally understood. His empire had never given him anything worth saving. But this little family? They were worth everything. For a long moment, the warehouse held a silence so sharp it felt like the air itself was trembling. Dust floated back to the ground, settling over broken crates and overturned metal shelves. The smell of gunpowder thinned. And in the center of it all, Norris stood like a man awakening from a long, violent dream. He lowered the pipe he'd used to disarm the last attacker. His pulse thundered, but something inside him had gone startlingly still, clear, like cold water after a storm. Jackie exhaled shakily from behind the old forklift, one hand braced against the metal frame. Eli clung to her side like a trembling shadow, eyes wide and wet but alive. Very alive. Norris' chest rose, fell, rose again. Thank God. Outside, tires screeched as the remnants of the rival gang peeled away into the night. Broken, humiliated, and too uncertain to risk another run after Norris had disarmed every one of them without a single fatal blow. They had come expecting the devil they'd always known. And that was the one man Norris had refused to be. He walked slowly toward Jackie and Eli, careful not to make any sudden movements, as if approaching two fragile things he was terrified he might break just by breathing too loudly. "You're safe now," he said, voice rough but steady. "Both of you." Jackie's lip quivered. Relief radiated from her like heat off pavement. You didn't kill anyone." He shook his head. "Didn't have to." But the truth ran deeper. He couldn't. Eli stared up at him as if seeing something new, something he hadn't known to hope for. Norris crouched down so he was eye level with the boy. Not towering over him. Not intimidating. Just present. "You did great hiding like that. Real brave." Eli swallowed, wiped his nose with the back of his hand, and whispered, "You came back for us." Norris felt the words hit him with almost physical force. He nodded once. "Always." Jackie stepped forward, something unnamed and trembling in her expression. "Norris, why? Why risk everything for us?" He looked at her the way a man looks at sunlight after years underground, unsure he deserves it, afraid it will burn him, but unable to turn away. "Because somewhere in all this mess," he said quietly, "protecting you too, it felt like the first right thing I've done in a long time." Jackie blinked fast, the emotion too full, too raw. She reached out and touched his arm, just a light brush, but enough to send a shock through him. "You are doing the right thing," she whispered. Her words settled into him like anchors. Or roots. He wasn't sure which yet. They spent the next hour resetting what the gang had destroyed. Norris moving heavy crates back into place, Jackie sweeping glass into piles, Eli picking up scattered tools and handing them over with two hands like they were treasure. The warehouse, battered as it was, didn't look like a battleground anymore. It looked like something trying, struggling, to become a home. The rusted windows caught the last hints of morning, soft gold creeping in as if the sun was trying to warm the cold corners that had never been warmed before. When the floor was clear enough to walk without stepping on debris, Jackie stood in the center and turned slowly, taking it all in. "I know it's crazy," she said, "but I don't feel scared now. Not with you here." Eli nodded, slipping his small hand into Norris's without hesitation. "Me too." Norris froze at the contact. The boy's fingers were tiny, warm, trusting. Something inside him, something old, bruised, and long abandoned, shook loose. Jackie watched the moment unfold, her eyes softening. "I trust you with him," she said quietly. "Completely." Those were words Norris had never expected to hear in his lifetime. Not about anything, and certainly not about something as fragile as a child. He swallowed hard. "I won't fail him. Or you." "I know," she said. For a moment, they simply stood there, three people in a half-ruined building, surrounded by echoes of a life Norris no longer wanted and possibilities he never believed he deserved. Jackie looked around again and let out a small, hopeful laugh. "You realize we've basically turned an abandoned warehouse into a home?" Norris snorted softly. "A home with bullet holes. Character," she said with a shrug. Eli pointed to the patched-up corner where Norris had fixed the leak weeks ago. "This part is mine," he declared proudly. "And that," Jackie said with a smile, "is exactly how a home starts." Norris felt warmth spread through his chest. Slow, cautious, but real. "Guess we're all rebuilding something." Eli tugged on his hand. "Are you gonna stay with us?" Like, forever. The question hit harder than any attack that night. Jackie's breath caught. Norris knelt again, cupping the back of Eli's head gently. If you want me here, if your mom wants me here, I'll stay. As long as you need me. Eli nodded fiercely and hugged him. Norris didn't hesitate. He wrapped his arms around the boy, holding him as though holding a promise. Jackie wiped a tear from her cheek and stepped closer, her voice soft. Looks like you're stuck with us. Norris closed his eyes, breathing them in. Acceptance, warmth, something like love. For the first time in years, the future didn't look like a battlefield. It looked like a doorway, and he was finally ready to walk through it. Morning arrived gently, slipping through the fractured warehouse windows in long, warm ribbons. Where once the light revealed only decay, cracked floors, rusted beams, forgotten corners, it now touched signs of life. A blanket folded neatly on a crate. A small table Jackie had scrubbed clean. A patched roof where Norris had climbed up the night before to stop the draft. The place wasn't perfect, but it breathed differently now. Less like a ruin, more like a beginning. Eli was the first one awake. He always was. He darted across the open floor, his footsteps light, laughter rising as he explored the now safe space with the wild excitement of a child who finally had room to be one. "Mom!" he called, lifting an old metal nut he'd found. "Treasure!" Jackie smiled from where she was rolling up her sleeves. "Add it to your collection, explorer." Eli saluted dramatically before racing off, leaving the echoes of his joy bouncing off the walls. Norris leaned against a support beam, arms crossed loosely as he watched. He wasn't sure when the sight of a child laughing had begun to feel healing. But it did. More than that, it felt like proof. Proof that yesterday did not get to decide today. Jackie joined him, brushing dust from her palms. "He slept without a nightmare," she said quietly. "First time in weeks." Norris nodded, swallowing the warmth creeping up his throat. "He's tougher than he knows." "Kids learn toughness when they have to," she said. "But confidence, safety, that comes from people who choose them." Norris glanced at her, surprised by the softness in her voice. She looked up at him then, really looked. "I'm grateful you stayed. Grateful you're here." He shifted slightly, the old instinct to step back pressing against the new desire to step closer. "You and Eli, you make this feel like more than just an old warehouse." Jackie exhaled slowly, her shoulders easing. "It's strange. We survived so much these past days. And yet right now," she glanced around the sunlit space, "right now it feels like we're standing in something fragile. And precious. Something worth protecting," Norris said. She nodded. A quiet agreement passed between them, unspoken but stronger than anything they'd voiced so far. Eli ran back toward them, his cheeks flushed. "Norris, come see my treasure corner." Norris raised a brow. "You have a whole corner?" "Yeah." Eli tugged his hand. "It's ours now. Nobody scary. Nobody yelling. Just us." Norris felt something crack open inside him. Not pain, but release. "Lead the way, kid." Eli dragged him across the warehouse to a stack of wooden crates they'd rearranged the night before. On top sat a line of small objects. A gear, a marble, 2 bottle caps, and a spring. "These are the things that survived," Eli declared proudly. Norris knelt beside him. "Looks like a good start." Jackie watched from a few steps away, the scene warming her eyes. "He's building a world," she murmured. "So are we," Norris said, still crouched beside the boy. When he stood, Jackie was closer, her presence steady and calm. "I know you think your past makes you dangerous," she said softly. "But what I've seen these last days, what Eli sees, is a man who chose compassion over violence. Who chose us." He breathed out slowly, like the truth she spoken unlocked something in him. "I don't know what I'm becoming," he admitted. "But I know who I want to protect." Jackie's lips curved, not a smile exactly, but something hopeful. "Then that's enough for now." The three of them spent the rest of the morning clearing clutter, opening boarded windows, letting the sun find corners it hadn't reached in years. With every scrape of a broom, every laugh from Eli, every shared look between Norris and Jackie, the warehouse changed a little more. It wasn't a hideout anymore. It wasn't a battlefield. It was a home in progress. Raw, imperfect, but alive. By afternoon, they settled on a blanket spread near the warmest patch of sunlight. Eli curled against Norris's side, already drifting towards sleep. Jackie rested a hand lightly on Norris's forearm, her touch neither hesitant nor possessive, simply present. "Feels peaceful," she whispered. Norris looked around the warehouse. The cracks, the patched holes, the beams still bearing scars of a life he was leaving behind. Then he looked at Jackie, and at the small boy breathing softly against him. "Feels right," he said. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the empire he'd walked away from, or the violence he'd refused to return to, or the ghosts that still lingered behind him. He was thinking about this moment, this warmth, this family. And the future didn't feel like a threat anymore. It felt like a doorway they were all willing to walk through, together. The sun dipped slightly, filling the warehouse with a gentle amber glow. Dust swirled in soft spirals, catching the light like tiny stars. Norris drew a slow breath, letting the peace settle into him. This wasn't the life he'd expected, but it was the one he chose. And that made all the difference. If you believe in second chances, in family beyond blood, subscribe and share this story to inspire others. In the quiet, in the warmth, in the fragile hope of a rebuilt life, one truth settled over them like a blessing. In the ruins of a past built on fear, a fragile family bloomed, proving even shadows could hold light.